Mach 0.95, 8,000 nautical miles of range, 51,000 feet, 4 separate living spaces, a cabin altitude of just 2,691 feet, and a price of around $80 million. Now, if those numbers immediately made sense to you, congratulations. You are already an aviation nerd. But if they sounded like someone reading random figures from an aircraft brochure, do not worry. You are in exactly the right place. Because over the next few minutes, I am going to explain what those numbers mean, why they matter, and why the Bombardier Global 8000 might be one of the most exciting private jets ever built. And you are hearing it from someone who may be far too excited to explain this particular piece of aviation nerdiness. Let us begin with the headline number, Mach 0.95. Mach is simply a way of comparing an aircraft's speed with the speed of sound. So Mach 0.95 means the Global 8000 can travel at 95% of the speed of sound. It is not technically supersonic, but it is getting extremely close. The Global 8000 is the fastest business jet in service, and the fastest civilian aircraft since Concorde. That is an incredible achievement when you remember what this aircraft actually is. Concorde was a needle-shaped supersonic airliner powered by 4 enormous engines. It was specifically designed to fly at more than twice the speed of sound. The Global 8000 is a private jet with a bedroom, a dining area, a kitchen, and seats designed for people who would prefer not to spill their coffee. And yet, it can fly closer to the speed of sound than any other civilian aircraft operating today. But the Global 8000 did not begin as a completely new aircraft. Its story really begins with the Bombardier Global 7500. The Global 7500 entered service in 2018, and it was already one of the most capable private jets ever produced. It had an enormous cabin, 4 separate living areas, and enough range to connect major cities on opposite sides of the world. For most manufacturers, that would have been enough. But Bombardier discovered that the aircraft still had more performance hidden inside it. And this is where the story becomes very interesting. In May of 2021, a global test aircraft flew over the Pacific Ocean, near the coast of California. Flying alongside it was a NASA-operated F-18 chase aircraft. Its job was to observe the flight and collect data. The Bombardier aircraft entered a shallow dive and began accelerating. Mach 0.9, Mach 0.95, Mach 0.99. And then, it crossed the sound barrier. The aircraft eventually reached Mach 1.015. A business jet had gone supersonic. Now, this does not mean Bombardier secretly built a private Concorde. The aircraft only crossed Mach 1 during a carefully controlled test. It was not cruising from New York to London at supersonic speed, with passengers drinking champagne in the back. But the test proved that the aircraft remained stable at speeds beyond anything it would experience during normal service. That gave Bombardier the confidence to raise its official maximum speed to Mach 0.95. And here is why that final 5% matters. Once an aircraft crosses Mach 1, it creates shock waves. Those shock waves can reach the ground as a sonic boom. That introduces noise restrictions, more difficult certification, greater structural demands, and a completely different level of engineering complexity. Bombardier avoided all of that by stopping just short of the line. The Global 8000 gives its passengers most of the practical benefits of extreme speed without becoming a true supersonic aircraft. It is the aviation equivalent of walking right up to the edge of a cliff, looking over it, and then building a luxury apartment there. But speed alone would not make the Global 8000 special. The second major number is 8,000 nautical miles. A nautical mile is slightly longer than the regular mile used on roads, so 8,000 nautical miles is about 9,200 regular miles. That is roughly 14,800 kilometers. It is enough range to connect many of the world's most important cities without stopping for fuel. And that last part matters more than it may sound. A fuel stop is not simply a few extra minutes on the ground. The aircraft must descend, approach an airport, land, taxi, refuel, complete its checks, take off again, and climb back to cruising altitude. One fuel stop can add a significant amount of time to an already long journey. The Global 8000 is designed to remove that interruption. Instead of dividing one journey into 2 flights, passengers can board the aircraft, close the door, and remain inside until they reach the other side of the world. And while it is doing that, the aircraft can climb to 51,000 feet. That is nearly 10 miles above the ground. Most commercial airliners normally cruise somewhere between 35,000 and 40,000 feet. The Global 8000 can climb above much of that traffic, and above a large amount of the weather happening below. But there is an important difference between the altitude of the aircraft and the altitude experienced by the passengers inside it. This brings us to the strangely specific number of 2,691 feet. When the Global 8000 is flying at 41,000 feet, the air pressure inside the cabin is designed to feel as though the passengers are only 2,691 feet above sea level. That is what Bombardier means when it talks about cabin altitude. Every pressurized aircraft creates an artificial environment inside its cabin, but it does not normally recreate the exact air pressure found at sea level. On many aircraft, your body may feel as though it is sitting several thousand feet up a mountain, even though the aircraft itself is much higher. The Global 8000 keeps that simulated altitude unusually low. So why should you care? Because on a flight lasting 12 or 14 hours, cabin pressure can affect how tired, dry, or uncomfortable passengers feel when they arrive. A lower cabin altitude can make the journey less physically exhausting. And this is where the Global 8000 starts to make sense. At first glance, it looks like an extremely fast private jet. But the real product Bombardier is selling is not speed. It is usable time. The cabin is divided into 4 separate living areas. Depending on the configuration, passengers can have a lounge, a dining or conference space, an entertainment area, and a private bedroom. There is also a proper kitchen and a dedicated area for the crew. This means the aircraft does not simply transport passengers for 14 hours. It allows them to continue living during those 14 hours. They can hold a meeting, eat a proper meal, watch a film, sleep in a bed, and arrive ready to continue working. That is the logic behind almost every feature on the aircraft. Mach 0.95 saves time in the air. The 8,000 nautical mile range removes fuel stops. The low cabin altitude reduces fatigue, and the 4-zone cabin turns travel time into working time, sleeping time, or living time. To an ordinary passenger, saving a few minutes on a flight may not sound especially valuable. But the Global 8000 was not designed for an ordinary passenger. It was designed for people whose schedules may involve New York, London, Dubai, and Singapore within the same week. If an aircraft saves part of an hour on one journey, that may not appear dramatic. But if it repeatedly saves time across dozens of long-distance flights, while also allowing its passengers to work and rest properly, the value begins to accumulate. At least, that is the argument Bombardier hopes buyers will accept before handing over around $80 million.
And Bombardier is not the only manufacturer competing for those buyers. Its biggest rival is Gulfstream. The Gulfstream G800 has a published maximum range of 8,200 nautical miles. That is slightly farther than the Global 8000. However, its maximum speed is Mach 0.935. That is slightly slower than Bombardier's Mach 0.95. This creates a beautifully simple rivalry. Gulfstream can claim its aircraft travels farther. Bombardier can claim its aircraft gets there faster. For most of us, that difference may seem almost absurdly small. But this is what happens at the extreme end of any technology. Once every aircraft is already luxurious, already long range, and already extremely fast, tiny advantages become major selling points. The same thing happens with supercars, racing yachts, and high-end watches. Nobody needs the final 1%, but the final 1% is often the entire reason the product exists. The Global 8000 is also important because of what it means for Bombardier itself. Bombardier was once a much larger transportation company. It built trains, regional airliners, Learjets, and long-range business aircraft. But after years of financial difficulties and major restructuring, it sold its train business and moved away from commercial aviation. The company that remained became almost entirely focused on business jets. That means the Global 8000 is not simply another expensive aircraft in Bombardier's catalog. It is the flagship of the company Bombardier has become. Developing it from the existing Global 7500 was also a very clever decision. Instead of beginning with a blank sheet of paper and spending years designing an entirely new aircraft,
Bombardier improved a platform that had already been tested and placed into service. Even existing Global 7500 owners can have their aircraft modified to unlock some of the Global 8000's improved performance. So, despite all the futuristic numbers, the Global 8000 is not a wild technological revolution. It is a careful evolution. And that may be the most impressive thing about it. Bombardier did not need to invent a new type of engine. It did not need to redesign every airport. And it did not need to convince governments to allow sonic booms over major cities. It simply found the absolute limit of what a conventional long-range business jet could do.
Of course, we cannot talk about an $80 million aircraft carrying fewer than 20 passengers without mentioning the obvious criticism. Private jets produce a large environmental impact while transporting very small numbers of people. The Global 8000 is also a flying symbol of inequality. It is an aircraft designed to save time for people wealthy enough to purchase something that costs more than many commercial airliners. Those criticisms are completely fair, but they are also part of what makes the aircraft so fascinating. Commercial aviation is normally about compromise. Airlines must balance fuel, cost, passenger capacity, ticket prices, and airport limitations. The Global 8000 exists in a world where many of those compromises have been removed. It shows us what aviation engineers can build when the main objective is not affordability or efficiency per passenger, but maximum capability for a handful of people. The result is an aircraft that can fly nearly 10 miles above the Earth. It can travel 8,000 nautical miles without refueling. It can move at 95% of the speed of sound, and it can do all of that while someone sleeps in a full-size bed inside. The Global 8000 did not bring Concorde back. It did something far more practical. It took the dream of near-supersonic civilian travel, removed the sonic boom, reduced the passenger count to 19, and placed the entire experience inside a private jet that can use the aviation infrastructure that already exists. Concorde turns speed into a public spectacle. The Global 8000 turns it into a private service. And more than 2 decades after Concorde disappeared, the fastest seat in civilian aviation is no longer inside a supersonic airliner.